Free energy now.
Imagine a world in which each home has its own power generator that obtains its energy in such a way that no fuel has to be added. Imagine every vehicle being able to run without ever stopping for fuel. Imagine each appliance having its own power source that never has to be recharged. That is the world of the future. Join with us now as we track our progress towards such a world.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. You can join us online at freeenergynow.net, where you can find a list of past guests, download those interviews, and read the stories associated with those shows. We're joined today, March 13th, 2014, by Rick Crammond of the Keshe Foundation. He's been a volunteer there, and he was referred by Mr. Keshe this morning to respond to some issues that have raised and hoping to get a little more information. I posted a story at PESN today titled Mehran Keshe Assassination Plot, Website in Jeopardy, and Product Rollout. Quite a title. And so hoping to get some clarification. Rick, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, just give us really briefly, if you could, kind of your involvement with the Keshe Foundation.
Okay, well, a couple of years ago, I decided to take on an obligation of doing the transcripts for the videos, the English transcripts, and things snowballed from there, and I ended up getting connected and just helping out wherever I could with the Keshe Foundation, doing movies. I host the workshop series and try to help out just wherever I can in various capacities.
Yeah, you were host of the most recent one. I recognize your face from the workshop number 10.
Yes, right. I've hosted almost all the workshop series, and we started that last year, about a year and 3 months ago now.
Are those just virtual, or are there actual gatherings involved in those?
Well, they are virtual in terms of, it's all done by Skype and online and so on. So the workshops themselves are virtual, you might say, but the workshops now are actually, people are experimenting and doing things, and they show and demonstrate during the workshop through videos and pictures what they are doing, and Keshe can comment and compare and that kind of thing.
Your profile on Skype shows you as being in Canada. What part of Canada are you at?
I'm in Western Canada on Vancouver Island.
Ah. Yeah, the Keshe group is pretty much international. There are some people there on site at location. Could you give us kind of an idea of how many people are on site, so to speak, and how many people are involved cybernetically, so to speak?
Well, on site we have what's called the knowledge seekers of the Spaceship Institute, and that is currently 8 people. It'll be 9 or 10 in the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of weeks. And they range everywhere from China and Japan through to U.S., Belgium, Romania, and various other countries. Mr. Keshe deliberately selected people from virtually all over the world, including Africa would be the latest member.
Ah. And what about, is there anything going on with the Health Institute right now?
I'm not clear. I believe the last I heard at least is that Mr. Keshe will still deal with individual people as far as accepting them as volunteers for the health program. But it's not very active right now at this moment. It will be more of an emphasis in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I've been told the next couple of workshops will start to delve in more extensively into the health aspect of the Keshe technology.
Okay. We didn't finish the earlier question. For those who don't know, your on-site is in Italy right now, right? What city?
In Brescia in northern Italy. And yeah, that's where the workshops originate from, and that's where the work is going on for the Spaceship Institute right now. And you asked earlier about the virtual world of the Keshe Foundation.
Yeah.
That is extensive. It's one of the jobs I do is I'm in charge of people doing translating, and I'm aware of at least a dozen languages that the Keshe documents end up getting translated to. It's a network we have that the information goes out instantly out into the world and gets, it's just put out by people all over the world at this point. There's few countries that are not affected, it seems.
Could you, where you're kind of on the inside track, so to speak, give us an idea of what magnetizes you to this movement, and both from a spiritual intuitive point of view as well as from a cognitive scientific point of view, evidence versus intuition?
Well, that's a big one. I could go on for hours.
Yeah, in 5 minutes.
Well, when I was a kid, everyone got asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it would be, a fireman, a policeman, or, whatever, Indian chief. I said I wanted to be a spaceman. And that was one of my dreams as I grew up. But I didn't like the idea of being on these giant firecrackers going up into the air. I just didn't have an affinity toward that type of technology. And I kept waiting and waiting, expecting there to be some kind of better technology. Where's the flying cars that we were promised back in the 50s and 60s and so on? And I realized as I got older that the flying cars just weren't happening, other than the clunky designs with propellers and that kind of thing. And that where's the free energy that we were promised and all that as well. So I'm seeing a real lack in the science establishment in carrying on with these things, and whether they're in underground black op projects or not, that's debatable. The situation is that we don't have the stuff that we should be having in this society now. And a few years ago, quite a few years ago now, I got overwhelmed by gasoline fumes and other solvents from my work as a mechanic, and then I ended up being highly allergic to oil. And that has changed my life significantly. I can't even go out of the house without getting overwhelmed by exhaust fumes and that kind of thing. So these are sort of factors that pushed me and pulled me in that direction. At the same time, I've got a strong spiritual pull toward this teaching, because it incorporates the laws of the universe in this particular science, you might say. And it's more than just science, because it includes science and the spiritual world, and they both tie in together through this technology. In fact, it's important to have the balance on both sides in order to even enter into a dialogue with this technology, I believe. So let me see, where can I go with that? Ask me a more specific question.
Okay, so you've addressed kind of the philosophical, spiritual end. Now let's talk about what has piqued your interest and kept you there from a left brain point of view. What have you seen evidentiary-wise that has kept you from just seeing this as another dreamer?
Right. Well, before I met up with Keshe, I was very interested in the nanotechnology world. I was, always following up on the news feeds on nanotechnology and the latest developments and so on. So it was a natural match when I discovered that nanotechnology was an essential part of the Keshe type technology, the plasma technology. It's a merging of the plasma plus the nanotechnology. And if you look at it, nanotechnology now has become one of the most major profit centers of the world. It's just gone over the $1 trillion mark in the U.S. They did a study, came out recently, and that $1 trillion mark in business came 2 years before they predicted it in the study. And the study just came out a couple of years ago, so it's it was just started a couple of years ago. So it's a big surprise to government and industry and to everybody how prevalent this nanotechnology is becoming. So that's one aspect. And now you throw in the idea of plasma, especially the idea that 99.9% of the universe is composed of plasma, and yet we know so little about it, really. So what I saw was that Mr. Keshe had a unique perspective in that he does things in a different manner. He does things in a way that's simple in many ways, simplified yet complex in the interactions that take place. That's kind of a funny way to say it, but basically, if you look at nanotechnology, it's a whole different world where different principles apply, different effects take place compared to the bulk metal of something. Then the nanotechnology of that metal will be completely different characteristics. And those characteristics can be valuable inside of a reactor, spinning reactor technology. For me, the theories and ideas of Keshe answered many questions for me that I had for years and years. Like, what is an electron? No one's ever been able to explain to me what is an electron. Well, Keshe did it in 30 seconds, and I went, wow, that's it. Of course, that's it. And it's basically wound up magnetic fields. There are no particles. Particles are wound up magnetic fields. It's all fields. It's all essentially the idea of solid stuff is an illusion, just like the various esoteric teachers have been saying for millennia.
I'm guessing, just if I could interject for a second, that Jerry Smith, who I see as kind of a modern Benjamin Franklin in Denver, would agree with that. He says it's all magnetism, and that electrons are basically what you just said. They're magnetic. It's not the whole universe is more magnetic than it is electrical, and electrons are basically a subset of magnetism.
Right, yes. And then if you go into the proton and the neutron, well, what is a proton? Well, it's wound up magnetic fields. What is the neutron? Well, it's wound up magnetic fields that spit out an electron and a proton, which are wound up magnetic fields. Okay, and then what is the Earth? Well, it has its magnetic field. And it just came out recently, last couple of days, in the physics notices about this amazing sheath of protection we have around the Earth, that they're discovering more and more about this plasma field, protective magnetic field around the Earth that they thought was just weak, but it actually is very powerful in its effect. And it's, they're finding out more and more about this all the time, and it's just blowing the scientists away. Well, this is what Keshe has been teaching for years, that it's a combination of the gravitational and magnetic forces that provide the positioning, the positive positioning between planets or between other things in the universe. And this is what the basis of his system is his saucer, his flying system, is a positive positioning due to both the magnetic, which is like a repelling action, and the gravitational, which is a pulling action. Between the pushing and the pulling, you end up with things that are positioned between each other in a positive way. The same as two magnets. When you have them close together, you feel that pull, but you can also arrange certain magnets that have a push and a pull at the same time, and then if you push them together, you'll feel the push. If you pull them apart, you'll feel the pull. and that is like the idea of the gravitational plus the magnetic. We tend to separate them in science, but actually that's been one of the holy grails of science, how to combine those, how those forces are, the unified field theory that has been so evasive for the physicists and so on over the years. Keshe talks about those and describes those fields in his books and his teachings.
Okay. Really quick on the, when you're talking along these lines, it makes me think of what is now called the electric universe approach. You into that at all?
Oh yes, to me that's very much like the Keshe theories and ideas, and the electric universe concepts go a lot more along that way in terms of the plasma clouds and other interactions with the magnetics and electric parts of the universe. I tend to think it's more magnetic than electric, let's say, as far as the principal forces involved. Like, for example, Keshe talks about the matter is formed from the interaction of magnetic fields, essentially. The magnetic fields are the principal fields. The magnetic fields are the things that come before. They're the egg to the chicken, let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the idea that the universe is 99.9% plasma. Could you just briefly elaborate on what you mean by that, or what is meant by that, generally speaking, when that is brought up as a point?
Right. Well, scientists in general consider there to be four basic aspects to the existence of material. That would be in a solid, a liquid, a gaseous, and then the plasma state. Well, it turns out the plasma state is the most natural state in the universe. If you look at even our solar system, the sun is a plasma. And it is 98 or 99% of the mass of the solar system is in the sun. So most of our solar system is plasma in terms of its mass. If you multiply that out between all the other solar systems and galaxies and so on, it's mostly plasma. And the plasma can be not just suns and glowing orbs like that, but also plasma gets distributed through the whole universe, essentially.
When I think of universe, I think of the space between the objects as well, and
I'll just note that a physics paper came out a couple of days ago where they, in astrophysics, they noticed this huge hydrogen cloud that was between two galaxies. And they just kind of hit themselves on the head and said, well, golly gee, this is why stars are formed, from this cloud that we didn't notice before. And so it turns out that they haven't been noting these hydrogen clouds because they're very difficult to detect. They're spread out, but yet they have an enormous influence on the creation of new materials and new star systems. So again, it's a little detail that they sort of missed before, and now is starting to become more important and more prevalent, just because the tools that they have to see that kind of thing are becoming better and better.
So when you say 99.9% of the universe is plasma, you're not including the empty space, so to speak, between planets and suns and whatnot?
Well, this is if I was Mr. Keshe talking right now, I might say that everything is plasma in a sense. If you were to take, for example, a single hydrogen atom, what would that look like out in space when it's under a vacuum condition? Well, like Mr. Keshe says, the magnetic field of that, the plasma, in effect, of that single atom will extend out a cubic meter. Its influence will be over a cubic meter. And then if you extrapolate that out a bit and think, well, geez, there's a few of these hydrogens in every cubic meter through the whole universe, that means that every hydrogen atom is essentially in communication with every other hydrogen atom that is distributed through the entire universe. if you bump one, you're essentially bumping the other ones in a certain kind of sense. So these plasma fields, these fields exist and they interlock or interrelated with each other through the entire universe. Depends what you call plasma. You have to really define that. Science defines it a certain way, and Mr. Keshe has a slightly different definition, I think, in terms of, or perhaps quite a bit different, in terms of he might talk about the plasma of the proton, or the plasma of the galaxy, or the plasma of the planet Earth. All objects essentially have plasmas, their own kind.
Okay. Before we get too much more into the theoretical and esoteric, let's get back to the kind of the reason why I wanted to have this interview. The news that has come up today, if we could kind of jump into that for a minute, or not a minute, but a few minutes. This whole thing about the assassination plot by the U.S. government, website being in jeopardy of being shut down. I noticed that it was down a couple of days ago. It said that the account was suspended, and then it was back up. And then there's also talk about product rollout. So there's quite a few things to talk about. Let's get into this whole assassination plot thing for a minute. Do you know much about that?
Not really, no. I know that there's conflicts with some people in the Belgian government, and they seem to be tied in with a bunch, with the security networks and this kind of thing. And Keshe has made accusations against those people, and it would be natural to me that if they are tied in with those kind of networks, that there would be some kind of response like that. But I don't know. I only have heard basically what you've heard about that it's a problem, and I don't know anything else other than that.
Okay. What about the website being in jeopardy of being shut down?
Yeah, there was what they call a hole in the, what's it called, the Joomba, is that it? Joomba, I think it's called, application that helps run the website. I think a number of websites may have been affected by that. I'm not sure. I just know when the website goes down, and I know it is under attack quite often, on basically on a daily basis, and probably on a minute-by-minute basis. And it's been difficult that way because of the numbers of servers and numbers of attacks that are happening simultaneously and so on. So Mr. Keshe is making more of an effort now to get people to duplicate the website and get the information recorded onto various different sources, so that if something does happen, we still have the basic data we need in order to carry on with creating the things that we need to be able to do as experimenters and people that are bringing this technology into the world at this time.
From a keyman insurance point of view and duplication or replication of knowledge, it seems from my vantage point that we still have in Mehran Keshe somebody who has got a head full of knowledge, who hasn't divulged everything in one place, so that if something were to happen to him, somebody else could pick up the pieces and move forward. Could you maybe address that aspect as to what measures are being taken to provide some continuity if something were to happen to him? Hopefully it wouldn't, but just in case.
Well, the best thing that he's been doing is getting the information out into the world as rapidly as he can. So the workshop series, for example, has been important. That's established now. The videos have gone out, and people have gotten a basic understanding of what the technology is about. And so now, Keshe has the Spaceship Institute people with him. That's a bit of a buffer, you might say. They're working hard toward developing this technology to be able to present it to the population of planet Earth. And for example, there's rumors that there might be possibility of having a demonstration of lift before the end of the month with the people of the Spaceship Institute, and that would be a major announcement. I'm just saying that as a rumor right now, but you can expect big things to come from the Keshe Foundation in the next month or 2 months, if not the next few days. Mr. Keshe is under a lot of pressure right now to get the technology out. He's worried about his life being taken, and he wants everyone on this planet to have the benefits of this technology before he passes away.
In terms of his health, he's in very good health and has many years remaining.
Well, that's all debatable for any of us, I think. But the thing is, he could be, if he does get taken out, well, that's a big issue, but it's not going to kill the technology at this point. There's enough information, enough people who have the understanding now that the technology will go ahead. And if not through Keshe Foundation, through other places that are picking it up in different ways. Like for me, I see the nanotechnology field is eventually going to get toward the Keshe technology. There's a merging happening from many different directions. Eventually, the fusion people that are spending, literally tens of millions of dollars on their, hundreds of millions of dollars on their fancy apparatus, eventually they will come around to the Keshe type technology, where it's a more gentle process rather than the crashing together of things. And it's inevitable because it is the way the universe works. And that's the thing about the Keshe technology. It works with the way the universe works instead of trying to do it the way that that we've done in the past years that is not working. I mean, when I was a kid, they said fusion technology, 20 years in the future, as long as we spend billions of dollars. We spent the billions of dollars, and they're still saying we need tens of billions of dollars now and 20 more years to have this fusion technology. I mean, that's...
Yeah, meanwhile, the cold fusion industry is making huge strides over unity, and recently there's this HCAT technology. I've got a page I put up at h-cat.me with a synopsis of this open source by Justin Church, where you run hydroxy gas through a catalytic converter of an automobile, not on the automobile, but you have the catalytic converter separated, which is full of nanopalladium and nanoplatinum, and you have high energy hydrogen in the form of the Brown's gas interacting with that, and you get huge creation of heat from just a little bit of energy to create the hydrogen or the hydroxy gas. So people are working on building some heaters and documenting just how much over unity this process is. But it seems some people are saying it's as much as 10 times over unity, even at these early stages, not optimized.
Right. So again, this is how the nanotechnology is being implemented. Someone had that idea before, and it wasn't efficient, but now with the nanotechnology, all of a sudden it makes things 100 to 1,000 times more efficient, and the whole scenario changes. I'm just amazed on the things that come out almost daily in the nanotechnology realm, and people have to realize what a change in the future this is going to bring. This whole thing of burning fuels is just so silly and ridiculous that in 5 years we're going to be pointing fingers at people that are burning stuff and saying, oh, that guy's not going to last very long because the authorities are going to come down on him. Look, there goes a car with an exhaust pipe. Good, call the cops on him. It's going to be like that, because this whole thing of having exhaust pipes sticking out the back of a car, sticking into the face of the person behind you, is ridiculous. It is the most foolish human endeavor that I can possibly imagine. Today died from the results of burning fuels. Just from burning fuel, 10,000 people. That's like, an airliner went down the other day, 250 people. Well, you can imagine 40 airliners going down every day. That's how many people pass away from burning of fuels, according to the UN statistics. So that is a ridiculous figure, and for every person that dies, there's probably 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 that gets sick for that same day. And I'm one of the people that get really sick from this, and I've had it. I've just had it. I'm not putting up with it anymore. It's time for the new technology to come on strong. It is going to, and nothing is going to stop it, including whatever nefarious groups that plan on doing that. It's not going to happen. It's time on the planet now for some major changes, and that's it.
From about a year ago, or a little less, maybe 9 months ago, Mr. Keshe posted a video of what seemed to be a demonstration of some modification of gravity of the weight of an object that had his plasma effect going in it. What's your take on that and how solid that was as a scientific demonstration of the capability?
Well, essentially it was a crappy movie, and it didn't really demonstrate in a scientific way satisfactory to people, because it would have to be more locked down in terms of the criteria and so on. But that is an example of the way Keshe does things. It's kind of a little bit spur of the moment. It's winged, and here's his reactor. It works. It's working. It's one of his demonstrations. Yet it's on the other hand, it's only a taste of what the potential is of this, and a taste of what he can actually do and show. He never wants to give too much, because that's his insurance policy. If he was to show an actual working demonstrate a working reactor, chances are he wouldn't live very long at this point in time, or at the point in time of a few months ago. Now it's a little bit different. The situation is starting to change, because there's been a few foots in the door, as far as feet in the door, you might say. For example, Blacklight Power came up with their announcement recently of the really huge amounts of power to the billion watts out of a liter of water and this kind of thing. And that has opened up a lot of eyes, I think, and made people realize that there are some other alternate technologies that are out there that could really be working. And generating power is one thing. Generating lift is a whole other ballgame, though. Not too many people are claiming to actually be able to generate lift, except for the, what's his name, Perdovsky guy or whoever, the Russian fellow that claimed a 2% change in weight experiments a few years ago.
Yeah, that recent hovercraft thing out of LA, that was a disappointment. Got a lot of people excited and realized it was a scam.
The hover, HUVR board, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if scam's quite the right word, but yes, it was...
hoax, I guess, is a better word. It was a viral marketing campaign.
Viral, and you got 3 million views a day. That's definitely into the heavy viral. And it was an excellently produced movie as far as that goes, and it really worked well. But and they may actually be working on that technology, as far as perhaps, we do know that MIT is working on anti-gravity type technology as well, and so on. So it could be they do have a team that's actually doing that. And this could be a way to raise funds to be able to actually instigate the research in order to do it. After all, they did raise probably $12,000, I figured, on 12 million hits on their video. That's enough to at least pay for some of their shooting costs for the movie, or to pay research or something.
Yeah, somebody contacted MIT and they denied any involvement. Those quote-unquote graduate students were actors, not graduate students from MIT.
Right. That's true. I also note, though, there was an actual real hoverboard that came out 3 days ago. It's from Creative. I think it's Creativ. I think it's an English company. It's an actual magnetic hoverboard, but it only hovers over its plate that you can put on the table, or a special table that it has. It hovers a few inches over its magnetic plate, essentially, and it's got, magnetic hovering thing. You can get those hovering globes and that kind of thing. This company specializes in hovering displays. So you can put a laptop and have it hover over a display. They just happen to take one of the Mattel, I think it is, hoverboards that came out years ago, plastic hoverboard replica from the Back to the Future movie, and they stuck a couple of their special little round magnetic things on it that are able to levitate things. So strangely enough, that came out just a few days after the hover commercial. I thought they might be even tied together, but I think maybe it's just an anniversary for the Back to the Future movie, I guess it is now.
Yeah. Let's get back to one of the things that I covered in today's story was there were questions about an announcement of a technology coming out, and apparently it's a bit I guess premature. There was a statement that the power cell, I think it's being called, some 50 units had been delivered, and that apparently is not the case. They haven't started that yet. Do you know anything about that process and what's going on?
All I know about the Keshe Power Cell program is that it's basically when you buy a book, it goes toward that part of the Keshe Foundation. That the Keshe Power Cell is a sort of an offshoot of the Keshe Foundation, is the way I understand it. When you buy the books, it goes towards supporting that project of creating a solar cell, essentially, that works better at night than in the daytime.
Is that going to be a 5 kilowatt system?
I don't think it's that much power, but I guess it would depend on how large the units are, because they're, easily ganged together, the way I understand it, and so on. It's interesting also, along those lines, that just last week there was another physics announcement that physicists have now discovered that they can get energy from the Earth at night by absorbing the infrared and other rays that are given off by the Earth toward the blackness of space. So now they're developing a couple of techniques to take advantage of that, using these special diode circuits and so on. So I'm just noting that the scientists are once again starting to catch up with Mr. Keshe, so he's going to have to start releasing stuff even faster in order to keep on the leading edge of this technological revolution, I think. So as things accelerate more and more, and they are accelerating very rapidly right now in the whole world of science and technology, and the type of technology that Keshe is propagating as well, it's an amazing time in that way. We're so fortunate to be able to view this now.
One of the things that has been a criticism by otherwise supporters of the exotic free energy technologies, criticism about the Keshe Foundation approaches, it's handing things over to the governments of the world. Typically, governments nowadays are part of the whole corrupt power structure that's controlling people and manipulating and holding things back from us. And so to present technologies like this to them seems like a waste of time and if anything, an invitation for suppression.
No, but the idea is to present it to the governments of the world, because that's the way things are done now. You don't try to bypass all the governments of the world when introducing something new in terms of technology. There's no company that would try to do that, to bypass all countries of the world. So Keshe is smart. He gives them the opportunity. They've had the opportunity. If they decide not to go with it, to make it public and get it out to the people who need it, or get it out to the people who can develop it and so on in their country, then that's fine. That's when the people take over. And now this information is in the hands of the people being ordinary folks and people who are scientists and others who are just interested in this. You don't have to be an accredited scientist to be able to do this kind of technology. So what's happening is there's a massive movement now to enact this technology through private hands, because the governments, see, now that can be done now that the governments have the technology. They have it, they can do it, they can suppress it if they wish, if they want to go that route, or they can develop it, or they can try to ignore it. The same with all nanotechnology and plasma type technology. Every country of the world has the opportunity right now, this enormous wave of nanotechnology. And you'll see almost every country of the world is, well, many countries of the world, let's say, have now got nanotechnology institutes that they've instigated and spent millions of dollars on and hoping to get lots of jobs out of it and so on. So there's a big push that way, and I think, well, that's basically it, I guess, in that one. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I was just wondering on the, as I look at one other item we have in today's story, it's a roadmap of 2014 implementation, and reading through his plan for the future is like reading a futurist novel.
Yeah, my whole association with the Keshe Foundation is like out of some crazy novel. I mean, in fact, I can't imagine writing a novel with things that are more bizarre and more out there than being associated with the Keshe Foundation and Mr. Keshe especially. Last night, for example, we did the second Knowledge Seekers workshop, directly connected with the Mr. Keshe and the Knowledge Seekers. I hosted it. And what came out during that workshop were the plans for the flying saucer that is, or the spacecraft it's called, that will be built provided the funding is arranged and so on. The plans are there, and we were going over that and showing basically what it looks like. It's about a 40-meter wide craft with several stories high, and has room for, well, several hundred, if not several thousand people would be able to take a journey in this craft. And that is on schedule at this point for the end of the year, the end of this year. It's a major undertaking. It sounds almost crazy in a way, but this is basically the first time that private people, the people, are able to create a flying machine as opposed to some, major corporation or country that keeps it secret and so on. This is in the open. It'll be available for people to follow all the way along. And it's Keshe is now in the process of getting a new wave of knowledge seekers that will be at the Institute, the Spaceship Institute, and they'll be working on specific systems. The first group of people that he chose mainly for their sort of their attitudes or their heart. They're all qualified and they're all very bright in their own realm. But the new wave of people that will be chosen will be mostly those that are very specialized in the fields that are necessary in order to fly a flying saucer. Everything from the computer systems through to propulsion systems and food, water systems. They'll be generating food on board, generating water on board, taking care of all health issues and so on through different reactor assemblies and different, well, basically through the reactors, which are able to do all those things. It's an amazing part of the Keshe technology.
Yeah, I mean, we all watched the whole Keshe thing with a strong interest and a bit of humor, kind of laughing at what seems like crazy claims nowadays, because we've been expecting this stuff for so long, and yet it hasn't come like you mentioned, and now here's a guy who's claiming to be doing it, and it doesn't at all fit the stereotype of how things like this typically come from an institution with lots of funding, with, you know, it's very grassroots in its nature.
That's right, and it's it is grassroots. And why is that, do you think? It's a quite amazing phenomenon. How is it that this high technology could possibly be grassroots? Because most people just don't care about technology when it comes right down to it. But the thing about Keshe is able to do, he's captured people's imaginations in a sense, but he's also shown that his principles and ideas are sound, and they are based on real things such as nanotechnology that he came up with back in 2005. He was demonstrating and showing his nanotechnology, that his coatings on these electrodes and so on in this simple Coca-Cola bottle reactor experiment. And that was, 7 years ago, or no, 8-9 years ago. And now we see that science is catching up with what he did back then. Again, a physics article came out a few days ago where they were finally able to coat the copper substrate with the graphene, a single layer of graphene. They were all so proud of themselves that they were able to do this. Well, this is what Keshe was doing 8 years ago, and showed it to the IMEC people who did the analysis of it and so on with their fancy equipment. So he's been there, done that, and he knows what he's doing. That's what I'm convinced of at this point, after working with Keshe very closely for the last year and a half or so, and these workshops and doing my own research and so on. And he's always has the answers when he's asked. In other words, he's been there, he's done it, and if he doesn't know the answer, he will say, I don't know, we haven't done any research on that. You know, you ask him about high voltage plasmas, he doesn't know, he hasn't done any research on that. And he doesn't use high voltage in his plasmas, you know. This was a big factor, because I did a lot of experiments with the high voltage, and all of a sudden I'm left thinking, well, if it's not high voltage, how do we get the plasma? So that's another discussion in itself.
No person knows everything is perfect. We all are needing each other in a team to pull things off. I'm curious, oftentimes people who know a lot tend to get an ego going, and it's hard to cross them or to say something contrary to what they believe is the case. They get defensive, they get angry, maybe even shut you out of their circle because they see you as being a threat to maybe a pedestal that they'd like to be on. I'm curious, from that vantage point, when people come across with ideas or concepts that maybe challenge what he has said, how does he respond?
Generally, I would say he is incredible in his deftness, deft being sort of agility, being able to handle the approach that people come at him with, which is usually the scientific type method. So someone will say, well, what is the magnetic gravitational field of the hydrogen atom under certain circumstances? And Keshe will say, I don't know, I've never measured that, and I'm not sure why you'd want to, or whatever. He'll have some comment that, and then he'll go on and say why it's not necessary to do that, because his techniques and his abilities, he may not need to know that certain little strange bit of information. So he has ways, he has a thing where he doesn't like people with letters behind their name, expounding the science theories to him and saying he's wrong because this is the science and so on, because he's actually done it. He's done the experiments, and he knows what he's talking about that way. He doesn't talk just because he was told that, you know, solar systems do this, therefore you're supposed to say solar systems do this. He does it because he sees the correlation between the micro world and the macro world, and that it's all basically the same principles involved, and that he's able to transfer from one realm to another, from one dimension to another. And this is the hard thing for people to understand, because you come from a science perspective. You're only coming from one dimension. It's a single dimensional realm, and generally you don't incorporate, if you know about, you know, microbiology, you don't usually extrapolate that to say, well, the solar system or the universe is just like this microbiology thing I'm doing here. Yet if one is totally aware at that time, you might see that there is correlations right from the body processes through to the galactic processes. They're all essentially very similar and can be correlated that way. And Keshe has some great ways of incorporating that information and able to explain to people. Like Keshe's idea is you bring the top scientists at the table and this farmer from Africa, and he should be able to talk to them both so they'll both understand what he's talking about, as far as whether he's talking about atoms or talking about his reactor. He tries to make it basic enough so that even the farmer can understand. You can see in the latest Fukushima video that came out, Keshe shows how to make nanomaterials that can be used in Fukushima and actually are being shipped to Fukushima this week. He's amazing, actually. I find he's always very gracious in the questions, and he doesn't fly off the handle, and sometimes he'll say, no, 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 or something like that, and try to clarify for people how to understand it from this you know, from his perspective, let's say. So I find he's very accommodating. He doesn't bend on getting into all the scientific theories and so on. He doesn't like to necessarily engage in these detailed battles about finer points of science and so on. Although he often does provide understanding and knowledge in very detailed ways in those conversations. So I find he's incredible as far as the way he can deal with people that I would have found quite obnoxious and shut them down immediately.
Mm-hmm. And then we're kind of running up against an hour long. I don't want to go too much longer. But you brought up Fukushima. Could you summarize for us what was that Fukushima video about, and what is the Keshe Foundation doing with Fukushima?
Okay, well, one of the knowledge seekers is from the Fukushima area in Japan. She actually moved out of that area because of concern for the radiation. She's now a knowledge seeker with the Spaceship Institute. That's Yukako Saito. And part of her work with the Keshe Foundation, with the Spaceship Institute, is to develop materials that can be used in the cleanup of the radiation at Fukushima. And she's made contact with the farmer groups and scientists and professors in Tokyo and in the Fukushima area. And she's working with them directly now through the Keshe Foundation to develop these materials and doing experiments on how they can be used, similar to what was demonstrated in the Fukushima video that came out. So that's one program that's going on there. And
what kind of results are they getting?
Well, they haven't actually done the tests yet in terms of Fukushima. They'll be sending off the materials, like I said, this week or next week, I believe it's going to be. And so the way the tests go, though, I mean, it's there are nanomaterials that get made through simple processes that are actually shown in the video, a step-by-step process using such simple things as drain cleaner and nails and copper wire and things like this. that it turns out you use drain cleaner or sodium hydroxide to create nanomaterials. It's a common lab process, actually, to create nanomaterial layers. And this is one of the main materials that Keshe uses. And it turns out these nanomaterials can capture the radioactive elements, and then you can pull out those materials either out of soil, out of water. There's different techniques to remove the actual radiation. And this is something it's not, Keshe isn't the only one in the world that's ever done this. This is a technique that's used now by science to use nanoparticles to remove radiation from the swimming pools, what they call the swimming pools around the actual nuclear facilities, a nuclear reactor. So he's using techniques he knows of that are used specifically for the spaceship technology, and he's incorporating those to be used for humans of Earth as well. But you got to realize the Keshe Foundation is primarily a spaceship organization. It's not here for generators and nanomaterials for the people of Earth, but Keshe is doing that now because he sees that we're in trouble, so he's willing to help. But you got to realize that the Keshe Foundation is primarily a spaceship organization. They will be building a spaceship.
Very good. Well, I really appreciate your time. And is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
Get those donations into the Keshe Foundation, because we need them now. It's actually a critical time, and the experimenters and the people in the Spaceship Institute and all the knowledge seekers could all use some support right now. I think it's ridiculous at this point in time that we have all these rich people in the world, and where's the money? There is none. It's not happening. There's been no donations in the entire last month into my GoFundMe sites and to help the experimenters and the people at the Keshe Foundation. So I say to people, if you're rich, get off your butt and make a donation. It's time for this planet to wake up, and it's time for you to wake up and make those donations and get the money to the people who know how to use it. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. And the website is keshefoundation.com, right?
That's the main site, yes.
Yeah. Do you have a separate website?
Well, I've got a website of my YouTube site, which has has all the workshop movies on it, as well as quite a few of my own movies. That's at Mr. Fix-It Rick is the YouTube site, MrFixitRick. And there's a lot of other sites as well. You can get some of the links on my YouTube movies. There's the Keshe Spaceship Institute website, Spaceship Institute Facebook, Spaceship Institute New Tech News, which is the news arm of the Spaceship Institute that's just been initiated as well. And several other websites have just popped up in the last week or so. So there's a lot of action happening right now trying to get this information out and to make sure it doesn't get suppressed by just making sure it's propagated all over the world and all sites possible.
Very good. Well, Rick, we appreciate your time and keep up the great work.
Thank you very much, Sterling. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Free Energy Now, brought to you by PES, Pure Energy Systems. You may access past archives and upcoming show info at freeenergynow.net and join us for our daily news at freeenergynews.com. We invite you to see our directory of energy technologies at peswiki.com. That's peswiki.com. PES, the Pure Energy Systems Information Network.
clarification. Rick, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, just give us really briefly, if you could, kind of your involvement with the Keshe Foundation.
Okay, well, a couple of years ago, I decided to take on an obligation of doing the transcripts for the videos, the English transcripts, and things snowballed from there, and I ended up getting connected and just helping out wherever I could with the Keshe Foundation, doing movies. I host the workshop series and try to help out just wherever I can in various capacities.
Yeah, you were host of the most recent one. I recognize your face from the workshop number 10.
Yes, right. I've hosted, well, almost all the workshop series, and we started that last year, about a year and 3 months ago now.
Are those just virtual, or are there actual gatherings involved in those?
Well, they are virtual in terms of, yeah, it's all done by Skype and online and so on. So the workshops themselves are virtual, you might say, but the workshops now are actually, people are experimenting and doing things, and they show and demonstrate during the workshop through videos and pictures what they are doing, and, Keshe can comment and compare and that kind of thing.
Your profile on Skype shows you as being in Canada. What part of Canada are you at?
I'm in Western Canada on Vancouver Island.
Ah. Yeah, the Keshe group is pretty much international. There are some people there on site at location. Could you give us kind of an idea of how many people are on site, so to speak, and how many people are involved cybernetically, so to speak?
Well, on site we have what's called the knowledge seekers of the Spaceship Institute, and that is, well, currently 8 people. It'll be 9 or 10 in the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of weeks. And they range everywhere from China and Japan through to U.S., Belgium, and you asked earlier about the virtual world of the Keshe Foundation.
Yeah.
That is extensive. It's one of the jobs I do is I'm in charge of people doing translating, and I'm aware of at least a dozen languages that the Keshe documents end up getting translated to. It's a network we have that the information goes out instantly out into the world and gets it's just put out by people all over the world at this point. Right? There's few countries that are not affected, it seems.
Could you, where you're kind of on the inside track, so to speak, give us an idea of what magnetizes you to this movement, and both from a spiritual intuitive point of view as well as from a cognitive scientific point of view, evidence versus intuition?
Well, that's a big one. I could go on for hours.
Yeah, oh, in 5 minutes.
Well,
Free energy now.
Imagine a world in which each home has its own power generator that obtains its energy in such a way that no fuel has to be added. Imagine every vehicle being able to run without ever stopping for fuel. Imagine each appliance having its own power source that never has to be recharged. That is the world of the future. Join with us now as we track our progress towards such a world.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. You can join us online at freeenergynow.net, where you can find a list of past guests, download those interviews, and read the stories associated with those shows. We're joined today, March 13th, 2014, by Rick Crammond of the Keshe Foundation. He's been a volunteer there, and he was referred by Mr. Keshe this morning to respond to some issues that have raised and hoping to get a little more information, I posted a story at PESN today titled Mehran Keshe Assassination Plot, Website in Jeopardy, and Product Rollout. Quite a title. And so hoping to get some...
Romania and various other countries. Mr. Keshe deliberately selected people from virtually all over the world, including Africa, would be the latest member.
Ah. And what about, is there anything going on with the Health Institute right now?
I'm not clear. I believe the last I heard at least is that Mr. Keshe will still deal with individual people as far as accepting them as volunteers for the health program, but it's not very active right now at this moment. It will be more of an emphasis in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I've been told the next couple of workshops will start to delve in more extensively into the health aspect of the Keshe technology.
Okay. We didn't finish the earlier question. For those who don't know, your on-site is in Italy right now, right? What city?
In Brescia in northern Italy. And yeah, that's where the workshops originate from, and that's where the work is going on for the Spaceship Institute right now.